What's going on, everybody? Another boxing video. This one talking about the great Wladimir Klitschko. And I've seen a lot of boxing fans talk about him or not talk about him. And, they're like, he wasn't that good. He was just all right. And they don't give him the proper credit that he deserves. In my opinion, Wladimir Klitschko is an all-time great. I think that a lot of people do not give him the credit that he deserves because of the fact that he's not American and he does not have such a flamboyant personality. But in reality, this man is one of the greatest heavyweight champions in the history of boxing. Now let's take it back to the beginning. Wladimir Klitschko, 1996 Olympics. He wins the Olympic gold medal. And he does his thing. He's the guy. A lot of people are thinking this is going to be the possible next great heavyweight. He's fighting on the way up. He's fighting some, build-up fights. And he fights Ross Purity. And he's winning the fight, but he gasses out. He punches his tank out. He never really gone that deep in a fight, I don't think. And he gets stopped by Ross Purity, and people are like, whoa, what? This guy got stopped by a journeyman? And it was really, really, really surprising. A lot of people were like, I don't know if he's the guy. I think this was in 98 or 99. I don't know what year it was exactly. He then works his way back up. He beats Chris Bird decisively after Chris Bird beat Vitaly Klitschko. This was when Vitaly had the shoulder injury. He didn't continue the fight. That was very controversial because in America, we kind of look at it as like, you continue fights when you have that kind of rotator cuff injury. Evander Holyfield did that. He had the same injury. So I think Floyd Mayweather too. So that was what was expected. He beats Chris Bird easily. He beats Monty Barrett easily. And a lot of people at that time are saying, this is the next guy. Like that Purity loss was a fluke. And Lennox Lewis was ranked number 1 in the world. And Vlad got himself as high as number 2. And I remember even seeing a clip of Jim Lampley, who used to be the announcer for HBO boxing, saying, this is the only guy, he was referring to Wladimir Klitschko, who might be able to beat Lennox. We fast forward to 2003. Lennox Lewis has already beaten Evander Holyfield. Lennox Lewis has already beaten Mike Tyson. Lennox Lewis, he beat a whole bunch of other contenders. Michael Grant, David Tua, Hasim Rahman, Shannon Briggs. He beat a lot of guys. That was the fight that people were talking about. And about a month before Lennox Lewis fights his final fight versus Vitaly Klitschko, Vladimir's brother, and it wasn't supposed to be Vitaly Klitschko. It was supposed to be Kirk Johnson, but Kirk Johnson got injured. Wladimir Klitschko fights on HBO versus Corey Sanders, a guy who is very relatively unknown. And he was, basically a journeyman fighter. I heard the rumor that HBO offered 12 other heavyweights, including Lennox Lewis, the fight versus Wladimir Klitschko, and they all turned it down. They didn't want it. Corey Sanders steps in there. Corey Sanders stops him in 2 rounds, and the fight is not competitive at all. From the beginning of the fight, it was a complete blowout. Wladimir Klitschko looked like he was unprepared. Him and his trainer did not know what they were doing. They fought a fast southpaw with fast hands, and he just looked overwhelmed. And that was the big knock on Wladimir Klitschko for a lot of years, was that he gets flustered and he panics when he gets hurt. And Larry Merson's like, yo, this guy, he's not the next big thing. He's not the guy. Then he gets with Emanuel Stewart, the great Emanuel Stewart, the Emanuel Stewart that trained Lennox Lewis, the Emanuel Stewart that trained Thomas Hearns, the Emanuel Stewart who had that style which perfected the jab, right hand, distance control, Kronk style boxing. He has a few tune-ups, and in the tune-up fight, Wladimir Klitschko gets dropped in that fight, but he wins the fight. He then fights Layman Brewster for the vacant title in 2004. He has Layman Brewster hurt. He knocks him down, does his thing, but then Layman Brewster comes back the next round and stops him. And once again, guys, Roy Jones was commentating on the fight. He's like, Vlad's got no heart. Everyone's like, he's a hype job. He's not this. He's not that. And this was with Emmanuel Stewart. And people, they wrote him off. They're like, this guy's not going to be no great heavyweight champion. He's got 3 losses already. But guess what? He worked hard. He kept grinding. He kept perfecting his style with Emmanuel Stewart. And he gets the fight versus Sam Peter. And I think he even had a tune-up fight before that versus Verrell Thompson. And he got knocked down in that fight, too. So he'd been knocked down a lot of times in fights, but he won that fight. He fought Sam Peter. And this was the turning point of his career. This is in 2005. He gets knocked down 3 times in that fight. But each time he gets up and he wins the fight, that was the turning point because he showed that he could handle himself with adversity versus a top 5 opponent, Sam Peter at the time. And he won that fight. And then in 2006, he beats Chris Bird, who he had beat in 2000 for the title. I think it was IBF. And for 9 years, he goes on a big run, beats everybody. And I don't want to hear about weak era because I don't care what era it's in. Beating all those guys is impressive. And he beat some good men. Chris Bird, Alexander Povetkin, David Haye, Ruslan Chigayev, Ibragimov was good. A lot of these dudes were good. Eddie Chambers, Tony Thompson. He beat a lot of good men. And people could say, oh, it's so easy. Anthony Joshua got knocked out by Andy Ruiz. So you can't say, oh, you automatically win every fight just because you're the favorite. It takes a certain amount of will, work ethic, and discipline, and mental fortitude to do what Wladimir Klitschko did. And he is one of the all-time great fighters. He's got one of the best right hands in boxing history. His left hook is vicious, as if you want to check that out, look at his fights with Eddie Chambers and Ray Austin. His footwork is really good for a big guy, and he perfected that style. He is an all-time great fighter. And even his losses at the end of his career, he lost to Tyson Fury, but that's Tyson Fury, and Tyson Fury never gave him the rematch. And he had one of the all-time great fights with Anthony Joshua, and that was a young Anthony Joshua versus old Klitschko. Imagine a young Klitschko versus old Joshua, if there was such a thing as an old Joshua. A 41-year-old Joshua, when he gets to 41, versus a 26-year-old Klitschko. Let's see how that goes down. Wladimir Klitschko is an all-time great fighter. He should be respected as such. Please let me know what you guys think. Do you guys think Wladimir Klitschko is an all-time great fighter? Or do you think he was just a guy who was lucky to be in a weak era? Please like, share, comment, and subscribe. Peace.